Yo! Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Main Stand in person with the nice camera, nice microphones. We got Mitch, we got Josh, we got me, Pat, running you through another quick little episode here. The long-term follow-up to our Top 5 Fullbacks episode. We're coming back. We're ranking more players. We're creating more controversy. I'm going to be extra specific with my words on this episode so I don't get hated on in the comments when we eventually post this on the socials. We're ranking center backs today. In the initial chat I think we had before the episode, there was a little confusion with the criteria, so we're going to lay it all out so there's no confusion for how we're ranking these players.
Yes.
Yep. If everyone's fit and able to play, what are the top 5 center backs? Does that make we good?
Yep.
Beautiful.
And holistically is the good word we're using for that.
Yes.
Holistically, the entirety of the player.
Witch doctors.
Yes. No form being taken into account. Anything like that. No, currently they're this, so they're number one. It's just holistically, probably over the last year or two, we're thinking about just who are the top 5 center backs in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Premier League.
I think we all
Premier
agree.
League.
Took a while to agree on that, by the way, but
Yeah, but we
here.
figured it out.
Well, there was just some odd verbiage.
Yeah, it was mostly my fault.
It
being
was.
real.
Pat's bad at explaining things.
Horrible at it. Who wants to start? Do we want to give their 5 and
I'll start.
yeah, go for it. Do
I'm
it.
feeling I'm feeling confident about my list.
In order. Is your list
In order, I'm gonna go 5-1.
Okay.
So 5-1. Let me go back here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. We have at number 5 Botman.
He's in my top 5.
I have Botman at Newcastle. Number 4, I have the sexiest center back in the league, Virgil van Dijk.
That's not how you spell John Stones, but sure. He's not in my top 5, but he's good. He's good.
He's there. Number 3, I have Ruben Diaz
3. Okay.
at 3.
Okay.
Kind of 2A, 2B,
Okay.
essentially. I think he's a top center back, but I think there's one better that I think we both can agree on. Number 2, I have Saliba for Arsenal. And
he's a monster. He's so good.
At number 1, I have John Stones.
Yep. We have the same number 1. Yeah. You can go, Josh. Do you want to just
Let's
rattle
lay
out?
him out.
Me and
then we
Mitch
can
have
talk.
similar lists, so we only really are different in terms of order.
Yep.
And I actually have to figure out the order. I think I'd go Van Dijk at 5. Simply, I think Van Dijk on his day is still a top defender, and I think Van Dijk probably in me and Mitch's list is the player that's closest to the fringe of not being in the top 5.
No, I got one, I think.
Okay,
I've got
sure.
one, I think, but
So Van Dijk, I think a couple years ago when we played in every single game possible, he was kind of back to, I would say, top form. Maybe not the form he was at previously before that injury. But it seemed like he had to come back. I would say in the last 12 months, he has something to prove. And I think
100%.
we're going to see this season, can he get back to that level or not? Especially wearing the captain's armband. We'll see where that gets him.
yeah, he didn't make my top 5, just so we can get this out of the way now.
Yeah.
Because I just don't think he's the same player as he was after the injury. I think he's a great player.
Do you think that was the injury, or do you think that's just general form, or do you think he was lucky before?
I don't think he was lucky before. I think peak Van Dijk, like the dude who came in second in the Ballon d'Or, is the best center back the Premier League's ever seen for that one singular season. I think it's the best individual season we've seen out of a defender in the history of the league. But he just didn't maintain that level. I think even the year after that, there was a little bit of a drop off.
Yep.
And then there was the injury. And then post-injury, he just hasn't looked as explosive into tackles. He hasn't looked as commanding in the air. It's not scared. I think scared is the wrong word, but he just doesn't command the same.
It's shaky almost. It's
Yeah.
just shaky. And I think that does kind of play into the injury. I think if the ACL doesn't go when it does early in the season, coming off the back of one of the most dominant center back performances of all time.
Yep.
I think things are a little bit different. And then obviously Liverpool's defensive woes. There's a lot of change in a center back pairing. We've had a lot of injuries over the last couple of years. I think it's just kind of like a comedy of errors that has led to it. A lot of inconsistency, but like Josh said, I do think giving him the center back armband or the captain's armband
spur him on a little bit. A lot of games in those legs too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But on to number 4. I think I put Ruben Diaz here.
4. You think there are 3 center backs better than Ruben Diaz in the Premier League?
The meat of my 5, I would say, is pretty interchangeable, and I would entertain any arguments for that. I think Diaz has more help than the next guy. And my next guy is Sven Botman. So a little bit higher than what Mitch had him. Yep. I think just Newcastle, since maybe the turn of last year, has just been impressive defensively. Mm-hmm. I think that one of the lowest amount of goals conceded. I think he was dribbled past like 6 times last year too, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah. Botman's in my top 5. I think Botman's on
surefire top 5. If you want to argue Diaz is better, sure. I just think Diaz has a more solid defensive unit to work with.
I think Diaz, personally, I think he makes everyone around him better. I think he is the reason City are as defensively sound as they are. Came in, won 2 titles in a row, completely changed a back line that was a little wonky, to say the least. And then I don't think anybody on this list has put in a Champions League final performance like Ruben Diaz did last year. He's
Premier League.
A monster.
Premier League.
Yeah, but you can't discount Champions League. You can't discount his performances.
I get it. I'm being a shitter.
I'd have Diaz at number 3, again, close, and then Saliba at 2. I don't know. I've been impressed with Saliba over the last 12 months. I think it took me a while to be sold on some of these Arsenal players. Mm-hmm. He's one that was really easy to kind of buy into, I think, early. A young center back, had experience in France, and then comes into this Arsenal team and just fits in.
He's so good. Saliba's an unreal footballer. Yeah. What a player.
And then John Stones, number 1, which is I would say an easy one for me. I think that was the easiest one to pick, of putting him at 1 and building down from there. Just because he fits in so many areas, and I think he's important to the way Pep plays football. He's also important to the way England plays football. If you look at the most important players in that England national team, John Stones is at the top of the list. So I think that's why he goes number 1 for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably put Diaz over John Stones.
Okay.
I'm not one of those people. Sure. I'll go top down for mine. I think John Stones is the best center back in the Premier League. I think there's an argument fully fit John Stones is the best center back in world football. Mm-hmm. I think what he does on and off the ball, playing center back out of possession, stepping into the midfield, and working in a pivot with Rodri, you saw over the last season. Just an absolutely, he's a Rolls Royce.
He's versatile.
A footballer.
So versatile.
He can do everything. He's unbelievable in possession as well. I think on the ball, there isn't a better center back in world football than John Stones right now. The ability to split the lines the way that he does, step out of midfield, glide past a player, and then break 2 lines of a press and just put it right into the more creative player's feet.
Super technical too.
Yeah, unreal technical ability. I think if he played midfield next to Rodri for a full season and got to do that role, for 38 full games, he stayed fit for a year, I think he could have 8 or 9 GA from center back. I think that's not a stretch to say, personally. I think he's like surprisingly creative for for a fullback or for a center back. Obviously, he's not, making these like hairpin line splitting passes you see guys like De Bruyne do week in, week out. But he's very good on the ball. And then so coming in at my number 2, I have Ruben Diaz. I think you can make a case for Diaz because I think he's a better out-and-out defender than Stones is, but Stones is great defensively, and I think he's the best footballer from center back in the league. 3, I have Saliba. I think you can interchange Saliba and Diaz pretty fluidly depending on what you're looking for in a player. I think Saliba's a lot more athletic than Stones. Than Diaz. He's definitely better on the ball than Ruben Diaz is too. I think in a couple of years, Saliba's probably going to be the best center back in the world. In full transparency, I think Saliba's unreal. I just think he needs a little bit more time. Yeah. But I think he's a great player, great center back.
He's definitely grown a lot over the last year and a half too.
Yeah, easily.
With this very young Arsenal team, and he's fit right in.
I think it's a stretch to say that they would have won the league with him fit, but I think it would have helped.
It would have helped tremendously.
Saliba didn't miss that pen against West Ham, but you might not have conceded.
Yeah.
So it's different with him in there for sure. I think they're going to be a lot better if he stays fit for a majority of this season, them being Arsenal, of course. 4, I have Botman. Unreal. I think Josh kind of touched on all the points I think we needed to touch on for Botman, but he's really, really good. I rate Botman super highly, and I think his age is very important for Newcastle. I think he's going to be a mainstay in that Newcastle team for a while, especially if they continue to buy smart, get better. I think Botman will be really
He takes a guy we're going to mention later too. He takes the pressure off Fabian Schär to be the best guy in that back line.
Yep.
And I think in the past couple of months that's been really noticeable with him.
Agreed. Yeah, he's been really, really good. And then number 5, I have a player nobody's mentioned, and that's Romero for Tottenham.
It's a good shout.
I think he's class. I think he's a little more error prone than a lot of the guys on this list. But I think at the end of last season, when Tottenham were kind of finding their feet, and then under Ainge, he's been a completely new player. I think you put him next to a more competent player in Van de Ven, and it shows how good he actually is. I think he's been class for Argentina whenever you look at them at the national level. I think it just took him getting a halfway decent partner.
Yeah, and I think that's why I don't have him in my top 5. He's definitely a fringe guy for me right now, in the 6 through 8, just because you have seen an incredible insurgence from Mickey Van de Ven at the start of this year.
Yeah, he's been really
and
good
it's
for
really
Tottenham.
kind of like current form for me where we're seeing him shine.
Yep.
More recency bias, but he is in the conversation for sure.
Yeah, I think if you ignore recency bias, Dunk probably sneaks into the top 5
Absolutely.
over him, who's a guy we'd be remiss not to talk about. I think Lewis Dunk has been class in that Brighton back 4 for a couple of years now. A goal-scoring threat. He's crazy on set pieces.
Is he your number 5?
No,
Or
he's
is
my
Romero?
he's an honorable mention. Romero's my 5. I
Okay.
think Romero's a little bit better than him right now, and that kind of tips it for me.
Yeah.
Newer guys that have come into the league also. Pau Torres for Villa. He's been really, really good. And one other guy I kind of wanted to mention because he's definitely on the fringe. I know Josh is a hater, but Gabriel for Arsenal too. I think Gabriel's class. I think he's been really good at the start of this season, and he is a player who needs a partner, which is why I don't think he is one of the top 5 center backs in the league. I think he is like low in the 10. If you did a top 10, he'd probably be 8, 9, 10 in that area. I think he's a great player. I think he needs someone to fill where he can't necessarily be, which is on the ball, composure, things like that. I think Saliba ticks all those boxes and is just a better defender than him, which is why, for me, Gabriel just doesn't sneak in there. What about you guys? Other players you think that just deserve a mention?
The one I wanted to we talked about off air was Ibu Konate.
Absolutely.
He's right outside the top 5 for me. Again, age is a big factor there, and I think in terms of pace and power, there's not many guys in the league, I think, that are stronger in those areas than Ibu Konate. Another guy that's pretty good on the ball as well. And he has to, play next to a Van Dijk coming back from injury, and also Trent Alexander-Arnold, who we know has his defensive issues. So I think the role, the role he plays for Liverpool is quite important. That right side of center defense.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, he's good. 2 other guys, unless Mitch, did you have anybody you wanted to touch on before I
really
the rags?
I really think. I have Botman and Dunk in my fringe as well. I don't think we need to beat a dead horse there. But another thing for Konate internationally too, he's getting into that French team, and I think he's a very important player for Liverpool's future.
Schär's probably around.
Schär is in there.
Yeah, and then these other guys too, Lisandro Martinez and Rafael Varane.
to.
United are a mess, but they're good players. Martinez less so than Varane. I think Varane on his day.
I would say the other way around.
I would say the other way around as well. I don't think Varane has adjusted to the Prem really at all. I would have put Martinez. I think Martinez had a really good run last year.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think
each their own.
I think Martinez is really good. He's unbelievable on the ball. I think that's one of his more undervalued traits. If you aren't a United fan. But from what I've seen from Martinez, he's so good on the ball, and I think that's really important for a modern center back.
At his height too. being able to kind of get up amongst the trees and do what he does is
calling
impressive.
him the Butcher, I think, is a little bit of a joke, but I think he's a really good player. And we were remiss not to mention him at least around the top 5, top 10 center backs in the Premier League.
Tim Ream.
Maybe.
I honestly, he was somebody that I thought about throwing in the conversation too, just because of how important he is for that Fulham team. And I think we've collectively underrated them a little bit over the last couple of years, but they've stuck around and they're getting it done in the Premier League.
I would never underrate Fulham. A guy who's been really good at the start of the season, Joachim Anderson for Crystal Palace as well.
Yep.
He's been great for them at the start of the season.
Guehi's been pretty good too.
Yeah, Guehi and Anderson have been a really good.
Yeah, that's probably one we're going to hear about in the comments of Guehi should have been probably
absolutely
closer to top 5.
I mean, I have him on a 9 or a 10.
Yeah.
He definitely cracks my top 10.
Yeah, I think he's a great player.
I think the tough thing for a player like Guehi is he's in a Palace system that's kind of been tumultuous over the last couple of years. You have a revolving door of managers. Vieira leaves, and it kind of puts a dent in the way the system's playing. You have Zaha leave, and it's kind of shaky in the midfield. So, I mean, it does take away from...
Future starter for England, I think, Mark Guehi.
He should be.
For
but
sure.
If Tomori can't break in, then who knows if he can.
True.
Not with Southgate at the helm.
Southgate
But that's a different episode. That's for an episode we get an English guy on here to talk about it with us. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for us.
Let us know what your top 5 center backs are. Roast us for any omissions we might have had. I think we covered it pretty fucking well.
I thought we did all right.
Yeah, for 3 Americans.
Yeah. A couple of Yanks that don't know ball.
But this is the Main Stand Podcast, top 5 center backs episode. Comment, like, subscribe, share, do the thing. Listen to the podcast, share the podcast.
Yep.
We have a lot more content coming out throughout the season, so we're really excited about it. Big stuff happening in Portland with the USL coming for 2025, so we're always looking forward to that. But yeah, let us know what you think in the comments down below, and we will see you next time.
If you're going to any Halloween parties, plug your phone to the aux and play this episode.
Yep.
Yes, of course.
Spooky season.
Deuces.
Bye.
Peace.